Well, you guys, I'm really getting excited because I can definitely feel spring in the air. Stuff is finally starting to bloom. I'm going to point out to you my first tulip, way too early. I think it's one that came back from last year. But finally, stuff is starting to look pretty good, and it's needing a lot of water and a lot of grooming. So the front porch is getting its makeover. Stuff is starting to come together. Stuart, did you just smell those hyacinths? Incredible. So some of the stuff died in the window box, and I'm going to come back in and I'm going to plant it to fullness. I know I have told you guys that I was going to do this before, but there just really hasn't been an opportunity, or it's been too cold, or the weather just didn't cooperate. But you can see back here how this is already starting to grow up and fill in. There's some Carnegie hyacinths coming up. I believe those are color blends. There's going to be some daffodils blooming. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to steal from Peter to pay Paul. I'm going to steal some of this same color, these pansies and violas, from other areas of the garden where they were mistakenly planted. I'm going to put them in here and probably add some edibles to my window box. I'm also doing this, you guys, because I can't ever keep from showing you my uglies. I'm seeing a little bit of a sign of what could be a little bit of late frost damage, or it could also be maybe a little bit, can you see that, Stuart? Yes. A little bit of stippling, maybe from some spider mite. I'm not really sure. I think it's actually some late winter damage, late cold, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on that, and if it is a pest, I will make sure that I address that very, very carefully. Okay, this guy also needs some pruning, but this is a classic example of romancing the ordinary and taking a common shrub and making it extraordinary. And this was, we did a video on this a long time ago, Stuart. I don't know if you remember. It was planted, Stuart's laughing like, oh yeah, okay. But it was planted way in the back. I pruned it up, and because I wanted to expose the legs, because it was getting kind of opened up and lanky. And now I think this is going to be just brilliant here in this pot on the front porch. I'm going to move this pot over a little bit, or I should more accurately say someone else, maybe you, Stuart, is going to move this pot over or help me move it over. And this whole area will be restyled with blooming plants, fresh evergreens, and it will look considerably better next time you see it. But I'm finally in a position where I can do that. But I'm happy to say that progress is definitely being made. Look over here, Stuart. This is that old broken pot that I've reused so many times. I like it because it's got that kind of anthropological, architectural dig vibe to it. But look here, even though the foliage is a little bit sad, I've got some sweet muscari coming up. I believe these were some Brex bulbs that they sent me to try, some sweet little muscari. And boy, there's been all sorts of bee activity and pollinator activity already. I will probably take this, groom it a little bit, cut off some of these burnt edges as it gets a little bit bigger, and then I'll probably mulch this in some moss and things so that it's really, really pretty just before we're going into Easter. And then obviously there's other pots I have to fill. I finally did take out the 2 dead boxwoods that were in here. I'll refill those with something else, and I'm kind of excited about that. So Stuart, let's go back out here. And then this leads me to my question of the day. There's some more daffodils over there, Stuart. But I want to know if you have, no matter what zone you're in, even if you're in a colder zone, do you have anything that is in bud or bloom now? What is the very first thing? Because I think that's a wonderful thing to record in your garden journal, is what is the very, very first thing that comes into bloom. And for me, it has been actually those tete-a-tete daffodils and those little crocus I showed you later. So, well, I take that back, Stuart. You can see I'm talking over myself because I'm so excited. The first things were actually the Hellebores, and then the daffodils. So you can see over here, there's more clumps of Hellebores. These were some that I transplanted from the mother load the mother lode patch of Hellebores over here. And some of that foliage froze out again, so I'll cut it off and start it over again. And then all of the pansies are starting to respond. So they're putting out new blooms, and I'll come back in here and cut out and clip off this tattered frozen foliage. But you can see that they are starting to really respond. I fed them today with some liquid feed, and then there's bulbs coming up around them. And then in short order, you can see it starting here. Some of the ground covers, the Vinca minor, I've got some other little primroses and things that are coming up, and definitely, and I see also some weeds. Let me get those out of there. But all of that is starting to respond. And someone told me that that favorite kind of mulch that I like to use, that shredded pine mulch, the soil conditioner, Happy Grow from Lowe's, somebody told me that they had that back in stock. So I'm gonna come back in after I do a little bit more pruning this weekend and come back in here and kind of mulch some of these areas so it looks very, very tidy. So this guy is just way too early, which leads me to believe that this may be one that came back from last year. But this is worthy of observation. So it may be an old bloom that came back and rebloomed again. It could be a new bulb that I planted that is blooming rather early and short because of the kind of weather that we had this year. Sometimes I notice the bulbs, when they bloom shorter. The ones that bloom first often will bloom shorter, and then the subsequent tulips that come up will bloom taller and more voluptuously. The other thing is this stem will continue to grow. And if we do get a light freeze or even a gentle snow, it really won't hurt them. So that'll be just fine. If I wanted to come out here and exploit and shop my garden, look at these little volunteers of Blue Point junipers. I could bring those in and pot them up and have some little free topiary. What else is going on here, Stuart? The Hellebores, oh my gosh, the bees around the Hellebores they have been ecstatic. They are all over the place, which makes me very, very happy. I need to come back in here and groom this yarrow. It blooms white, very delicate and feathery, but it is a tough, tough plant. And this is a native, I believe, that came from my sister's lake house up in northeast Oklahoma. And it's been really tough, and it puts out a very lovely, lovely little white bloom. But if you squint, Stuart, can you kind of squint? You can see just the tops of the pretty pansies and the color. And some of the phlox is even starting to put out a few buds. So it will start out, I think, pretty much all lavender and yellow at first. Stuart, can you see here? There's a few buds of this. This is called many different things. This is emerald blue creeping phlox. It's also called thrift. And I think there's another term for it too. I'm not sure. But this faces south, so it can handle full sun, but it does need some moisture. Do I hear the beginnings of some sprinkler heads coming on?
Looks like it.
Because I'm having my sprinkler worked on. I did remove that boxwood that I asked you about in my question of the day, I think in my last walkabout or last week, and I removed it and we planted more foxglove. So I've got lots of foxglove in here now, you guys, which should be stupendous when it's their time and following all of these bulbs that will come into bloom pretty soon. You can see a little bit more of the creeping phlox over there. And again, if I wanted to shop my garden, it looks like there's a holly that is coming up, and I could dig that up, put it in a pot, make a topiary out of it if I wanted to. This area over here has really been cleaned up. I removed all of the leaves underneath this rose bush. These are some drift roses, and I cleaned up all of the leaves, any potential black spot spores and things. That has all been removed, so these plants won't be a vector for transmitting more black spot. And let me see, what else have I done in here, Stuart? Tell me, what do you notice anything else different?
Give them an overview.
Yeah, giving an overview, and you can tell that really the boxwood is becoming much less congested. Last year I didn't focus on that because I was just trying to really get the infrastructure back and get it healthy again after all of the things that it suffered. But now I'm starting to get, it's a little bit lighter, it's able to breathe a little bit more, and there'll be a little bit more room for the color to spread out. The other thing, when I planted those boxwoods smaller, I did it knowing that ultimately as they matured, I would remove some of them. So part of this is kind of by design. You can see on this east side over by the drive that there are some boxwood in here I'll probably be removing too, and transplanting some of them, putting some of them in pots, maybe even gifting some of them. Now, Stuart, if you don't mind, right in front of Dot the Fiat, you can see that there is, right in front of my neighbor's air conditioning unit, there is a huge abelia, and it was getting it had tons of suckers and nests at the bottom. We cleaned out about 2/3 of the suckers that were coming up from the bottom and a lot of the leafy debris in there. This is one of the things I helped my neighbor with, and we pruned it up a bit, and then I'll probably plant some more things underneath it to make it look a little bit nicer. So have I forgotten anything, Stuart? Okay, I remembered the front yard question of the day. Now when we go to the backyard, you guys, again, recognize your limitations, get help when you need to, and I've gotten help, and it's very noisy in the back because there's lots of stuff happening back there. I'm so excited to finally get this stuff done. So let's go to the back and hopefully you'll be able to hear me. This is a perfect example of knowing your limitations. So for the first time ever, I am having someone help me with electric shears or battery-operated shears to prune the boxwood, because I'm pruning it back a lot harder than I normally do, and I'm not using my normal long-bladed shears. I'm also having my friend Victor help me with this because my back cannot be at that angle for any length of time. And that's also a little bit heavy for me because it does take a while to do this whole area. But it's already looking beautiful, and I'm really, really thrilled. Now, hey, Victor, stop for just a minute, because let me introduce, this is my friend Victor. He's probably my only friend I would trust to do this, and I don't think, this is the first time we've ever used electric clipper or battery operated clippers on this. And Victor does such a good job because, what did we take it down? Maybe 4 inches?
4 inches?
Yeah.
Yes. And some places was a little less, but in some places was 4 inches.
Yeah, and I don't know if you could hear him because he's not mic'd up, but 3 or 4 inches, a little bit more, and he knows exactly, we talk about it beforehand, but he knows exactly what I'm going for, and you can see he puts out tarp so that it catches all of the things that fall. But after this, we're going to give it a really good feed, and it's going to produce lots of new growth because it's getting ready to go into its active growing phase. And so all of this area here that looks bare should flush out. And we're just going to pray for rain, aren't we, Victor?
Yes.
Yeah, so Victor does an exceptional job. He's a true plantsman and knows not just about how to tend it, but about the plants themselves. So thank you, Victor.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I trust Victor to do it. So we're getting this area all looking good because back in here, as soon as he gets finished, I'm going to plant some cool season greens and things. Now, something else that I've got going on, you guys know that I do like to do most of the work myself. So I'll do the planting and that kind of thing. I'm holding, you guys can go ahead. I'm holding you up, but I do have some helpers today because this is, I would say once or twice a year, I bring people in to really help me. And so today I've got all of the things that I categorize as too heavy, too high, or too hard for me to handle myself, or where I would hurt myself too much if I tried to do it. So we're digging out, I'll show you in the front, we're digging out some great big boxwood. He's planting them into and transplanting some stuff into different holes for me. And I also have somebody coming out today that's helping me on the sprinkler system, because my timer box, I've had the same sprinkler system for maybe 25 to 30 years, and I'm changing out the timer box, and I'm trying to do all that kind of maintenance stuff before everything leafs out and becomes difficult to access. So there's 2 to 3 times a year when I really make an investment in labor, getting people to help me with things. And to me, it's well worth it. I will save up my pennies to have somebody help me with this kind of stuff, because again, it's so important to know your limitations and what stuff you can do yourself and what you can't. Stuart, let's kind of do a little torque if we can, and I'll show you that I'm starting to bring lots of my stuff that was indoor outdoors, and I'm going to give it a good watering, a good feed. A lot of it has lost some of its foliage, and I'll start primping and pruning and feeding those so that they look good once they get outside, because within the next 2 weeks stuff is really going to start to pop. You can see over here, look at all these little tete-a-tete daffodils. Stuart, do you think people can hear me? I hope they can.
I can hear you now. Earlier, it'll be a little harder, but I'll preface it.
Yeah, we apologize, you guys, but we needed to get this done. So there's more little tete-a-tetes. Look, Stuart, look at that sweet little crocus. And these tufts, you guys, these are all tufts of larkspur. These are coming up lots of different places. So today we're going to spend cleaning up all of these redbud seed heads, all of that, taking off the dead and diseased foliage so that, or hopefully not diseased, but the dead foliage, so stuff can flesh out new growth and be really beautiful. There's some more daffodils here and some tufts of daffodils in there. This was the area I was working on the other day, you guys, where I said I clipped back this Annabelle Hydrangea, and you guys can go back and look at that video to see how I did it. I'm not clipping back any of these, but I am removing a lot of the leafy mulch and the leafy blanket that was here, because the next 10 days it looks like it's not even going to get below freezing, and I think they'll be able to handle it from this point on. I also want to expose, so look here. This is the stuff it was covering. And you can see down here, it's starting to put out new growth, but it's pale because that was all covered up with leaves. So now it will be exposed to the sunlight, and you can see how I believe this blooms on old wood, but this will start leafing out from the bottom up, and I will determine whether or not I'm gonna get any hydrangea flowers on these canes. Do not, if you're not sure about when your hydrangeas bloom, please don't cut them down. And so many times, a lot of you that have helpers and yard people that come and help you regularly, make sure that you tell them not to cut what looks like just to be dead sticks down, because these dead sticks are going to come out with some new projectile growth. So now that these leaves have been cleared out, I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to give these a good granular feed. I'm going to water them real well. And Stuart, what day is it this week? We think we're going to get rain. I think Saturday we've got a 70% chance of rain. So I'm kind of hurrying to get all of this stuff done, fertilized, seeds planted, so that I can take advantage of what little rainfall we've been having. So come over here, Stuart, if you would. This is a true walkabout today. So my minor bulb garden is starting to show some activity. More of the little daffodils are coming into bloom. Some of the taller ones will come into bloom later. These are hyacinths that I probably bought from Trader Joe's in the past, and then after they bloom, I plant them out here. And I don't really care if they come out and the blooms are a little bit smaller and not as vigorous as they were that first year, because that's okay. It's just gonna be these little pops of purple, and I haven't wasted the blooms. You can see here, I've got a pot. These were some of those purple hyacinths that I had in my bedroom, the scented blooms. Got those from Trader Joe's, and I'll add them to this minor bulb garden. Now, some other activity back here. These are all tufts of Columbine. This, I believe, is mostly purple, but I also have yellow Columbine that will be coming up back in here. The yellow Columbine was gifted to me from a friend of mine, so I think of her whenever it blooms. And then I've got some pots where I forced some sailboat narcissus in here, sailboat daffodils, and I had these, I'd put them in the garage, and I forgot to take them out. They were hidden behind something. So hopefully these will start blooming and taking advantage. They were very pale when I brought them out, but now they're starting to green up. So that's just a little bit of what's going on here, and pretty soon I'll start working on the boxwood terraced plant stand and the plants that are there. A lot of these, the boxwood balls and things, it is just, I mean, it's like a living bocce ball court around here, because boxwood balls are being moved in and out and around, in and out of pots, in and around different places in the garden. And who knows where they will eventually end up, but I do know that some of these pots are extremely heavy. So while I've got help, I'll help them move the pots so that I don't hurt myself. Here's some fun. These are, let's see, what are these? I think these were City of Harlem hyacinths that I potted up in bulbs, and this is what happens. So when they start coming up, and Stuart, can you smell that? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's heavenly. These started to come up after it got really cold. These here that are nipped, I didn't get these back under cover, and you can see how when we had that frigid 16-degree day last week, how these really got frostburned because I didn't bring them in and protect them. But there's other bulbs that are starting to come up in here. I'll keep these watered. See the little tips, Stuart? Yeah. There's another hyacinth. So I'll be able to make these look good, full, and blooming before too long, and I'll just have to do a little bit of grooming and maintenance on those. So here's a big dilemma. This will be my second question of the day for you guys, and that is, look at these gorgeous, these are dried Terra Hydrangea blooms, and these have been inside, and now I'm starting to bring in live plants, live cut blooms, flowering branches. And by the way, you guys, if you have not already started to do it, right now, at least in Zone 7B Gardens, it's the perfect time to cut pear branches, quince branches, forsythia, redbud branches to force. And I've got some inside that I'm forcing, and I'll put a picture in the community tab next time we go in. But now's the time to do that. But also, this is typically the time of year that I throw out my dried blooms from the previous season, because I know I'll have more blooms coming on this year, which I will then dry, because these get kind of dusty over the winter and the late summer. But these Terra Hydrangea blooms are still so perfect. I don't know if I'm going to be able to discard them or not. I mean, look at the perfect form on that. This is a Terra Oakleaf Hydrangea. It's part of the Southern Living Plant Collection. So check them all out. If Terra's not available, look at some of the other ones. But they just dry beautifully. So that's my second question of the day is, should I discard these or just try to, I don't know, find another place for them? And look in here, here's another tip, you guys. This is kind of a tower of these hydrangeas, and how I made it was I had a plant form here. This is one of my egg tutors from my QVC line. I just packed it with some styrofoam, and then I can put the dried blooms in there. So that's how it deconstructs. I can take these out if I decide to compost them, and then I can just have that infrastructure there to use again for something else. So that's kind of what's going on here in the backyard. I'm sorry it's so noisy, but there's a lot going on today. It's very windy, the dogs are barking, but it's also pretty and warm out, so there's just lots of other people working out in the yard too. So Stuart, would you mind doing just a pan to end this video? We'll just kind of do a pan of the backyard, and you can see what it's looking like now and why it's still so important to have that evergreen infrastructure in your gardens. So there you go. There is your Wednesday walkabout. I hope you enjoyed it, and next time I talk to you, hopefully a lot more will be going on back here. Thanks, you guys. Well, if all of the noise hasn't put you off and you've moved on to another video, here is my outfit of the day. My straw hat I got in Colorado years ago, I think, and somewhere, is there a pin on here, Stuart? Oh yes, there's a peace symbol pin on here that comes from my sweet friend Jan Nadine at Hungry Holler. She sent that to me. My top is Tory Burch. Now, of course, I didn't buy it originally. It is a second-hand purchase. I got this off of Poshmark, but I just love the fabric, and I love that it's a little bit brighter and zazzier than I normally wear, Stuart. It's a little bit uncharacteristic for me, but I like it. My earrings are some of those lightweight wooden earrings that I got off of Amazon, really inexpensive. I'll try to put a link, and let me just make a notation about that. A lot of you say, oh, I have so many advertisements or so many links or whatever. Well, what I have found is if I don't go ahead and tell you guys where you can get them and give you a link, then I'll get 30 comments from people saying, where did you get those and can you give me a link? So it's a way that at the front end I can just prevent a lot of that. I did a video earlier in the week about my nighttime routine makeover, and I didn't say where I got my pajamas from, and I bet I've answered 25 comments from people asking me where I got them. So that's one of the reasons that I'm always sharing the links with you, just to make it easier on myself and you if you are interested. It's not just one prolonged advertisement. My breeches are the ones that I got off of Amazon. They have some stretch to them. I like them. They're high-waisted and they're very comfortable. And my boots are Mary boots. You guys know I love these Chuck boots from Mary Boots. I have them in a number of different colors. Have I forgotten anything, Stuart?
No.
I don't think I have a belt on. No belt today. So thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, there you go. There's my outfit of the day.